Hi guys, so you've all read the title, you know why you're here. I'm gonna tell you a bit about Frankenstein from Mary Shelley. It was first written in 18 it was first published in 1817. The first iteration was written in a small castle in Switzerland by Mary Shelley when she, her husband, and Lord Byron all went and wrote little horror stories to read to themselves while sitting out the storm. That was the first time Frankenstein was written, and after that it had some it had some slight rewrites, and it was then finally published. So first of all, I'm gonna tell you a bit about the story. Then I'm gonna do a more in-depth explanation of the story. This will contain spoilers. I will put a, I will put a timestamp somewhere so you can skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. And after that, I will talk about the themes of the story. So, the story starts off with Robert Walton. He's a rich English guy, and he's just chartered the ship to find the Northwest Passage. He writes most of this novel in form of letters to his sister back in England. So one day he's driving right through the ice. Then he sees two dog sleds, one broken down on the side of the ice, another one driving off into the distance. He's halting and is taking the man with the broken dog sled aboard. He tells him to follow the other dog sled and then breaks down. The man is brought into his quarters, and after he wakes up, he reveals that he is a Swiss called Victor Frankenstein. He then proceeds to tell Walton his entire life story, starting with how his parents met, his father rescued his mother out from poverty, and she was the daughter of his former best friend. So, after that, the family gets their first son, Victor Frankenstein, and on a trip to Italy, they met a poor girl. Her name is Elizabeth. The mother just decides to adopt her, and Frankenstein starts his first obsession with Elizabeth, thinking that one day she will be his. Then Victor gets two more brothers. Their names don't really matter, so does they in general. Only one matters. The other one you can completely forget about. Victor, from a young age, starts to absorb every knowledge he can get his hands on, mainly natural science. So he begins to study it all, reads everything in the family's library there is, and then goes to university. I forgot there was also Victor's childhood best friend, Henry Clerval. Sunshine personified. He is happy nearly all of the story. So, Victor goes to university. When he arrives, he suddenly realizes he is not the only smart kid, and that most of the teachings he had consumed were a bit old. So he then starts to try to get his hands on every science book he can and absorbs everything. After about 2 years of study, he then realizes I can create new life. This leads him down a path where after another year, he is constructing a human being out of body parts in his student apartment, like everyone does. So, he finishes the creature. It doesn't really get a name, but many different titles, including but not limited to Fiend, Demon, Creature, Monster. After finishing it, the monster opens his eyes, and there is a bright yellow. Victor then gets a bit freaked out after it grasps for him, and he then runs away because he never asked himself if he should create new life. He only asked himself, could I? He runs out onto the street where his friend Henry Cavill just appears out of a stagecoach and then leads him back to his home. Victor is extremely terrified because there is a gigantic monster he just created in there. He carefully opens the door to then realize it's gone. At first, he's happy. Then he has a mental breakdown and Henry has to nurture him back to full health. After that, he gets a few letters from his father and Elizabeth. They then travel back after he heard that his little brother William died. On the way back to the family's estate in Switzerland, he supposedly spots something that looks akin to his monster in the forest. When they arrive, his little brother Henry was killed, and Elizabeth she's really concerned about it because at first she thought it was because of a locket she placed around his neck the morning he disappeared. After a bit of time, the locket is found in the possession of the housekeeper Justine, and she's accused of murder. Victor then realizes it wasn't Justine, it was his creation. But he decides not to tell anyone because he doesn't want to seem crazy. So Justine gets sentenced to death, and Victor then decides to take a little break in nature. But who do he happen to stumble upon in nature? Right, his crime against nature. The monster appears. He brings him back to his hideout and then tells him what he has been up to. Following a peasant family, learning French, and killing his little brother and framing Justine. He then says Victor he is only dead because he's a misunderstood soul who nobody cares about. So he says, create me a mate and I will leave you in peace forever, and I will not be a threat against the society anymore. Victor with Henry then travels back to Britain to do that. He sends Henry off to do something in England or Ireland while he sets shop up in the Orkneys where he creates the mate. After nearly finishing it, he then finally asks himself again, what could happen if I do this? A bit late, but at least he did ask himself it this time before he actually finished it. So he then comes to the conclusion, maybe the monster and the mate will not get along because just you set two persons in front of another, that doesn't guarantee they will like each other. Maybe they hate each other and kill each other. Maybe they create a new super race who will enslave all of humanity, and he is to blame for that. So he decides to destroy the mate, and the monster swears to him revenge, and that he will be there with him upon his wedding night. Victor, completely self-absorbed as he is, thinks, oh no! The monster is going to kill me because I am the only important person in my life. So Victor then travels back and tries to find Henry. Henry is killed. Victor gets accused. He tells the judges what happened, the true story. The judges think he is crazy and let him go. His father brings him back to Switzerland and then decides to marry him to Elizabeth. And then in their wedding night, who happens to be there but the monster? And as everyone but Victor expected, the monster kills Elizabeth. Victor, completely infuriated, then decides to swear vengeance upon the monster and just follows him and tries to hunt him down, which leads him to the Arctic, where the monster doesn't feel cold and pain, but he does. This is why he breaks down, and then we pick up where Robert Walton picked him up. After a bit more rambling, Victor dies. The monster appears in his cabin, pays his respect, and then leaves. Robert Walton just sits there and thinks, this has a lot of parallels to my own life. Maybe I shouldn't try to find the Northwest Passage and just go back home and enjoy my life. this is how the story ends. So, what did I thought about the story? I found that Mary Shelley is very good at writing characters. She gives them good motivations, and I think she completely gets the point across when she describes Victor, because he's a self-absorbed, whiny med school dropout. And that's it. He isn't even a doctor or professor like most media make him out to be. And I also really like how she portrays nature in her works. It's very detailed descriptions, which make the story feel come to life. You can really imagine yourself either in the highlands of Scotland where he travels there, or back in the forest in Switzerland, with deep valleys and lush mountains. So, I think you should really give it a try to read. The language at some points can be difficult, but it's just another challenge for you to overcome. And if you're watching this because you haven't read the book and it's due tomorrow in school, a few minor infos. Mary Shelley's mother was a female rights activist. Keep that in mind when your teacher tries to start a discussion round. And also, it's a romantic gothic novel. Keep that in mind. It's good. You should bring that into descriptions of it, maybe a class test. To come to an end, the main theme of the story is science without any regulation can lead to very bad outcomes. You should always stop yourself and ask, should I do it, and not just can I do it?